one thing to think about is that if life throws you a curveball, you want to be as prepared for it as humanly possible. And that means mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, et cetera. And I think for us, we were in a good position to take on that news as best as you could, while simultaneously it really sucked, and it sucked for a very, very, very long time.
Over 1,700 new millionaires are created every single day in the US alone, and more than double that across the globe. They're people from all walks of life, most of them people just like you and I. So the big question is this: how are so many people who didn't inherit money or have any special advantages overcoming the odds and becoming millionaires? That's the question, and this show will give you the answers. My name is Jeff Lerner, and welcome to Millionaire Secrets. Welcome to another episode of Millionaire Secrets. This is Jeff Lerner, your host. Thrilled to be with you as always. And today, I'm extremely excited about our guest. His name is Jason Kalipa. He's the founder of NC Fit, which is a global fitness company. He was a CrossFit Games champion, which means he's as tough as I like to pretend to be or aspire to be. He's written a book called As Many Reps as Possible, which has a deeper meaning, this Amrap Philosophy that I can't wait to dig into. He's opened fitness locations all over Asia. He's a really successful entrepreneur, and I'm just stoked that he's on the show. Jason, welcome to Millionaire Secrets.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So let's dig in. I got your name. I mean, I'll say this for everyone's benefit. I got your name from Mark Bell, who's the creator of the Slingshot, and one of my favorite interviews I did. God, it's been a couple months, and I'll say this to everyone: if you haven't caught the Mark Bell episode, definitely go listen to that. That was a really good one, and I'm excited. I love talking to athletes and fitness professionals. You know, one of my core values is to eagerly do hard things well, and especially CrossFit. I mean, that's hard stuff. So there's so much I think we could talk about. Maybe we could start there. Like, tell me a little bit about CrossFit. Like, how'd you get into it? And frankly, how'd you get so damn good at
it? Yeah. So I actually just got done doing a workout right now, which is why I'm in a tank. But so when I was maybe 15, I started working the front desk at a traditional health club, right? The normal one you'd see, a 24-hour fitness, whatever it may be. And over time, I got introduced to a gentleman who I used to sell gym memberships with. So in high school, I was working the front desk. When I got to college, I ended up I started doing sales, and I worked there full time as I was going to college. And a gentleman there introduced me to the website CrossFit.com. And at the time, I had been doing a lot of bodybuilding type workouts. I had played sports in high school, didn't end up going on in college to play them. And so I got introduced to this idea of, kind of the workout of the day. And right. I kind of fell in love with this idea of doing things against the clock. And what I found was I would cherry pick for a long time, but I liked the idea of kind of finding new movements I hadn't done before. I liked the idea of doing it in a group setting. And I liked the idea of fighting against the clock and really trying to get as much work done as I possibly could. So I found CrossFit in 2006. And then I ended up training there for a couple of years before I won the CrossFit Games. And then I ended up competing in CrossFit at the highest level for the next 8 years until 2016.
Cool. So, I have kind of this, I was never a really great athlete, but I always loved training. And I don't know why. I love the process. I love the grit. I love the pain. I love the exhaustion. I feel like,
yeah,
not to get all, hyper spiritual, but I think that one of my favorite quotes is by Carl Jung. He said that neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. And so I think in life, we kind of have to find ways to suffer in legitimate ways, or else our mind will literally create illnesses to allow us to, to allow us to express our suffering in illegitimate ways. And I think that's one of the deep truths of working out. It's like, it's meant to suck. It has to suck to really do its job, right?
Yeah, I mean, most people would listen to you and they think that you're out of your mind, right? Like, you like to suffer, you like to go through this. But the reality is that I think as a society, we need to put ourselves in more opportunities to hit adversity. Like I just got done doing a really hard workout. I was hitting the end of my kind of threshold, and I was able to push through it. Now, some of us, when they think about competing at the CrossFit Games or doing a workout, they think, oh, like, why would you ever want to put yourself in those positions? But the reality is that they start to callous your ability to overcome adversity in a very like low risk environment. So for example, if you go into a workout and you're like, hey, I really want to do 20 minutes, but you drop off at 15, you kind of feel down about it. Next time you do better, right? The reality is that's a way for you to push yourself mentally and physically. But at the end of the day, if it's 5 minutes, you're not going to die. It's not a big deal. But you learn how to overcome that adversity and those challenges, which therefore then trend over really well into real life. So in real life, when things hit you really hard, you've at least been trying to acclimate yourself to this adversity through exercise. That's the greatest gift that competing at a high level ever gave me, was that ability to overcome challenges as adversity and compartmentalize those type of things.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I've been literally just this morning I was reading one of my favorite books, Scott Peck, The Road Less Traveled. I don't know if you've read that, but he talks about he's a psychiatrist, and he talks about problem solving, and that discipline is always the tool for solving problems. And you look at life and you go, okay, where, like you can't, when you go to school, I don't know about you, I never took a class in discipline. There was no discipline 101 taught at my school. It's like, where do you go to teach yourself discipline in a tangible way that's going to like seep into your bones? And I mean, it's the gym. Like, what else do we have to become disciples of discipline, which is ultimately the tool for solving all problems? And I feel like, the gym, I mean, gyms are cheaper than a therapist's office, right?
Yeah, a lot cheaper than a therapist's office. And so, yeah, I mean, providing real world application here is, for anybody who doesn't exercise, they're really missing out on a really beautiful gift. Not only to live longer for your family, not only to allow fitness to ever inhibit the things you want to do if your kids want to go whatever, right?
Right.
But they're missing out on the gift that it gives you in between the ears and the mental fortitude to overcome adversity when it hits you. And I'm sharing that as a guy who, in 2016, our daughter was diagnosed with leukemia. And that's a really beautiful example of how, as you train your mind, how when something challenging hits you in real life, you could use some of the skills that you've developed outside the gym, in the gym, to help you outside the gym. So I would highly recommend anybody who's not doing it today, go out for a 10-minute walk. And that's a huge win already right there.
Yeah. Amen. And it becomes this relationship. Relationships are challenging. I mean, they're wonderful, but they're challenging because they, equally depend on another person. Right. But this exercise, to me, it feels like a relationship. Every day I'm learning, I'm evolving, I'm growing, I'm challenging, I'm expanding my threshold and my vision of what's possible. And yet you have total control over that relationship, which isn't true in human relationships, right?
Yeah. And just to kind of, again, give you something tangible to take home is this idea of fitness. So I think a lot of people have a interpretation, of what a good workout is. I think that there's been, not to go off on a huge tangent, but decades ago, the commercial gym became popular. And what they popularized is the idea of selectoralized equipment to minimize risk and optimize the amount of people you could service. That was the business model. Minimize risk, optimize people you could service. Then about 15 years ago, if you look at the difference between a commercial gym versus a collegiate training center, they're night and day. One of them, you need a coach. One of them is more dynamic, power lifts, Olympic lifts, etc. One of them is more selectoralized. I would recommend anybody who's thinking about where they want to go in their fitness to look at the collegiate way of training, opposed to only looking at the commercial way of training. It's just something to open your eyes to. That, for example, CrossFit revolutionized the fitness space for this, and many gyms, including ours, have been able to build off of it and create functional training protocols that could really get best bang for your buck. So what are we talking about? 3, 4, 5 days a week. Get in your big lifts, your squat, your deadlift, your press. Get in those huge movers that move a large load and multi-joint. Then get in a 12 to 20 minute conditioning workout at a high intensity. That's interval training. And you could be super, super fit. Gone are the days of being on the elliptical for an hour. Instead, try and focus on this other way of thinking, and the results will come really quick.
Yeah, I will say this. I used to do a fair amount of cardio because mostly because I liked the mental process that it facilitated. You get in this, it's almost like Zen-like state. And in fact, my business, Entre Institute, literally the ideation of that business happened on a long run. And then I had to stop because my hips started to hurt. And now I do virtually no cardio. And I will say this, I'm just one anecdotal example, but I haven't gained an ounce of body fat since I eliminated cardio completely. I do a 10-minute warm up on a bike or an elliptical just to kind of get the blood flowing because I go work out so early in the morning. I still feel like I'm asleep. But other than that, I'm curious, what's your take on cardio in general? Obviously a CrossFit workout gets your heart rate up for almost the entirety. Is that enough, or do you feel like you need supplemental cardio?
Well, I think so when we talk about cardio, most people think about it as like a cardiovascular, like an aerobic state and
Right.
elevated heart rate and kind of a longer kind of single track type thing generally. But you could elicit a cardio response through weightlifting exercises done at a high intensity, through a variety of different things. If you're box jumping, kettlebell swinging, and doing dumbbell work, you could get a huge cardio response. And so what I would say is, yes, is there a place for long, slow distance training, like long distance running? Yes, of course. I ran a 10K yesterday, for example, right? Of course, 100%. Is there a benefit for in the morning to jump on a bike and listen to a podcast as you're riding the spin bike? 100%. But if you're looking for an all-around, well-rounded approach, and you only had 3 days a week, 1 hour a day, what I would tell you to do is get into some type of big mover lift, strength train, because it's so important for your body, for bone density and all kinds of health perspectives. But you need to know how to do it right, and then get in a 12 to 20 minute workout of intervals. So you could do, for example, 10 push-ups, 10 sit-ups, 10 squats for 5 minutes. Rest a minute, and then do that again. For example, you'll get a cardiovascular response, but you're using bodyweight exercises. You want to try and think about this like kind of like this push-pull effect. So you're doing kettlebell swings, which is like a pull, and then you could do a push-up, which is a push.
Right.
So you want to keep your body moving, and then you get that cardiovascular response you're talking about. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you're only running, if you're only biking, if you're only lifting, you're missing on other areas. Try and have a more well-rounded approach.
Yeah. And the more of your body that's moving inside of, the movement, the more joints, the more cardiovascular response, just because the more raw blood flow you need to pump in order to supply all the muscles.
Yeah, the more bang for your buck. If someone asked me, hey, Jason, what are the 2 best movements you could possibly do? I'd say one is called a thruster, which is a front squat all the way down, and then press over your head. Yeah. You're moving the load so far that it produces a huge stimulus on you. And the other would be a burpee, right? Where you drop to your floor, you do a push-up, and you stand back up again. They move your body through a very long range of motion, so they elicit a good response. Not to go off on huge tangents about training, but I just think that people need to start thinking about, when I'm done my workout, if I'm not feeling moderately exhausted, maybe I need to start switching up a little bit to get that failure to overcome it and move on to the next day.
Well, I'll say this, the nice thing about having my own podcast is I can talk about whatever the hell I want. And I love if anything, my podcast, the best moments happen when I allow tangents to run. So don't hold back on tangents. Okay. So since we're down the training rabbit hole, and you can tell, like for a non-athlete or fitness professional, I will go deeper than most on these subjects. I love it. I used to go buy Flex and, Natural Muscular Development magazines when I was like 15 years old. I've just always been super interested in this. And at 41, that fixation keeps me in decent shape. At least I won't be winning any CrossFit games, but so let's then talk about the Amrap philosophy. Sure. Is that something that you've kind of coined as part of your philosophy?
Yeah. I wrote a book called As Many Reps as Possible. And really what the motivation so for a lot of years, I would travel all around the world. We started off with so out of college, I opened up a brick and mortar gym, right? Brick and mortar business, which, not as many people are in these days. I opened 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Then we found an opportunity in corporate wellness. We expanded with corporate wellness to locations in many different countries. So I was on the road a lot, and I was training, and I was trying to balance, how do you own a business, really try and be successful there, with trying to win the CrossFit Games, while simultaneously I was married to my, high school sweetheart. We had 1 child at the time. We had another child coming. I started asking myself, man, how the hell am I going to balance all this? I just feel like I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out on everything. I'd be on conference calls with Asia while trying to get in my assault bike intervals, right? And it just wasn't working for me. And so one day I was just walking down the street and my wife asked me a question. I just looked over to her and I was like, babe, I'm really sorry. Like, I have no idea what you were just asking me. And it's because my body was somewhere, my mind was somewhere else. And I realized that if I kept going down that path, I wouldn't be doing anything well. I was just sloppy. Yeah. And my wife and my child deserve better, was my theory. Mm-hmm. They do. And so after that day, I started asking myself, dude, I mean, I'm never more present, more focused than when I'm in the middle of a workout, ever, right? You're in the middle of a workout. You're trying to get as many push-ups as you can in 1 minute. You're not going to go answer your phone. You're not going to dilly-dally. You're going to do whatever you got to do to get as many push-ups as you can. So I started asking myself, how do I blend that Amrap philosophy, fighting for as many reps as possible in my workout, with what I'm doing in real life? And so what I started doing is I started breaking it down. I said, okay, I'm going to Amrap everything. So from the beginning of my day, I'm going to look at it like riding a bike. Step number one, I got to identify what am I going to focus on for that time. Like right now, I'm focused on you and me. You don't see me doing anything else but this, right? So focus. Then I'm going to work hard at it, like pedaling a bike. Mm-hmm. And then throughout the duration of the day, I switch gears. So right now I'm with you. Earlier before this, I was doing my workout. That's all I was focused on. After this, I'm going to go get into another business meeting. That's what I'm going to focus on. When I get back home, I'm going to be with my family. I'm going to focus on that. And I started compartmentalizing my day, and it provided huge benefits for me as I was competing at the highest level, trying to build a business and then having a family. So that's the Amrap mentalities. Be present, be focused in each thing you're doing.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, again, we talk about the value of a consistent fitness practice. That's where you go tangibly in a way that you experience very physically and very viscerally and very, it's if you're doing it hard enough, you can't ignore it. You can't get distracted from it because it just freaking hurts. That's where you go inculcate these things, and then you can go apply it to the rest of your life.
That's right. And a good example of that would be, I found that through workouts, and then I'm still finding that through jiu-jitsu a lot. So in my workouts, I definitely Amrap, but I've also developed a level of efficiency and comfort. And so finding jiu-jitsu has been really valuable for me because when someone's trying to choke you, you have to be present and focused. And so that's been another rewarding thing for me, is to try these additional sports that require me to be present, focused, so I can then learn those skills and take it outside the gym.
Yeah. So I would love to talk some more about, is that Brazilian jiu-jitsu you're practicing? Yeah. That's another thing that I've not personally gotten involved in, except for a brief window in my 20s. I did it for less than a year. Just, I would call it like a hobbyist involvement. But again, I'm fascinated. I almost have like a romantic affinity for that methodology and that culture and those people. I mean, just what they do, I think is just so amazing. But before we circle back to that, let's talk a little bit more, because I don't want to gloss over what you said. Like, you weren't just like, oh, I've got a family and, oh, I've got a business and, oh, I try to work out. You were, very committed to your family. You were not just, oh, I have a business. You had what, four or five of your own gyms, and you were opening corporate wellness sites all over Asia with a ton of travel. So like a very involved professional life, right?
Yeah. Like in 2013, 14, those were really tough years because I was at the top of the sport, right? I placed, I was on Team USA those years. I took second and third at the World Championships, both of those years, right?
You're one of the best CrossFitters in the world while you're doing those other things.
Yeah. Well, what was happening is it was just tough because at the time, I want to say we probably had 20 brick and mortar locations, and in between corporate and commercially owned. And then it was the balancing act, and it's just, that presence and that focus was what helped me drive that. And then when my daughter got sick in 2016, that's when I took a step back in competing, because it was just, that's what had to be done.
That's a whole other level of family involvement for sure.
Yeah.
I just found out, for example, that a family member of mine actually is dealing with cancer. And I told my team, I'm like, hey guys, I'm on a plane tonight. I'm going to be gone the rest of the week. I'll be connecting via calls, but yeah, when stuff like that happens, it changes your dynamic. But But in general, I mean, I work with a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs and people that are trying to start or grow businesses. And, I love everyone, but I hear a lot of bullshit. And usually bullshit shows up as I don't have time. And so I just want everybody to take a moment here and realize we're talking to a guy who was one of the top CrossFitters in the world and managing a business with 20 physical locations and a committed father and husband. Like, it can be done. And what you're saying is the way that it can be done is with this total focus Amrap mentality that whatever I'm in, I need to be as committed to as if I had a 300-pound bar on my back that I was either going to break or get it back up off the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great way to summarize it. Yeah, and I mean, still till this day, obviously, I continue to use that mindset as we continue to grow our business, as my family demands start to continue, all of that.
So let's talk about the business. I see the sign behind you, NC Fit, and it just clicked. Tell me if I'm wrong, but the NC, the shape around it, is that the top part of Northern California?
Yeah, it is. So this right here is California. And so this logo was developed a long time ago. So essentially what happened is we were early on, we were CrossFit Santa Clara and CrossFit Mountain View, CrossFit Road City. We had individual, right, like gyms. Right. And what we said is we need one consistent brand for all of our locations because we didn't want to keep building up these individual brands. We wanted to summarize them into one. And so what we did is we created from CrossFit Santa Clara, CrossFit Mountain View, CrossFit whatever, we then created NorCal CrossFit. And they encompassed multiple locations around here. Then as we started to grow and expand, get into corporate wellness and digital and different stuff, we said, hey, we want something that's more indicative of our brand. We want to be in control of our brand. So NorCal CrossFit converted into NC, which represents NorCal, which is where I'm from. I grew up in the Bay Area. It stands for a lot of things to me more than just NorCal. It means innovation and et cetera. Then we rebranded NC Fit.
Okay. So, you kind of casually mentioned, growing across a series of CrossFit gyms. And I happen to have a really good friend who actually I also interviewed on the show. He's in real estate now. His name's Rob Lord. And again, I'll suggest to everyone that check out that episode. He's actually my best friend growing up from high school. I met him in driver's ed. And he's doing some really cool disruptive things in real estate now. But he used to own a cross-functional training facility in Dallas. And it was not CrossFit. He had his own kind of concept and brand and everything. But I remember at one point talking to him at great length about the difficulties that most CrossFit gym owners have, A, making the model work, even just at a single location, and B, ever expanding to multiple locations. Like at one point, he was talking to me because I do digital marketing and digital training. He was like wanting to create a course to help these small gym owners actually be able to grow their gyms because there was such a world of people struggling. So I have some perspective on the fact that what you did with your CrossFit gym is not what everybody does with their CrossFit gym. It's not like just a turnkey plug and play. It grows like a weed type of business. It's hard. And so I'd love, maybe you could talk a little bit more about why you think you were successful in that business before all this other stuff happened.
Yeah, I mean, the brick and mortar business is tough, right? You have a lot of overhead. You have a lot of people to manage. You're in the service-based business, and I think we caught the CrossFit kind of growth at a good time in 2008, and my competing and attracted certain coaches that were really big personalities, excellent coaches, and it just attracted excellent people coming into the gym. And that's what really helped us grow in the brick and mortar. And from the beginning, we really treated it as a business. So one of the things that I had benefiting me a lot, and still to this day, was surrounding myself, especially early on, with people who treated their business like a business and not just a hobby. And one of the challenges we have in the CrossFit space is that people love fitness. They get into it because they want to change people's lives, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually really important. But they miss the part of when they open a business, they're no longer a coach, they're now a business owner. And so that was the mindset we took from the very beginning, was this idea of growth, create opportunity, and treat like a business while simultaneously, obviously, providing an excellent service.
So wait a minute. Are you saying that just being competent and passionate about a skill or a trade doesn't automatically make you good at the business of being in that trade?
I wish so. I wish it was so, but no, that's not the case. You know how it goes. I mean, you have a really good chef who can't run a restaurant. You could
Yeah.
have a really good barber who's not, you got the world's best barista. It doesn't mean they're going to go open up Starbucks. I mean, it's just the way it is that you could be extremely service oriented, excellent at your craft, but the craft of coaching, the craft of employee management, the craft of owning and financials are all different crafts, and delegating that is really important.
Man, if only there was a place that people could go learn the actual skills of being an entrepreneur and growing a business. Man, that would be, oh wait, there is. It's called Entre Institute. It's my company. No, sorry. You lobbed that up for me too well.
I loved it.
But it's serious. I mean, it's for real. I get people ask me, they're like, well, why do I need to learn? Like it's this opaque thing because it was never taught in school. Therefore, it's like not a real subject. But I mean, when you say that you from the beginning set it up to operate like a business, maybe can you expand a little bit on what you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, at an early age, I started a couple of companies while I was in high school and college, and you learned really early on that it's not all fun and games, and that there is real expenses and real overhead, and there's real people involved, and with people, you got to learn how to manage them effectively. But just when I was going through college, I had the owner of the gym who really took me underneath his wing and taught me a lot about the business side of fitness. And then I replicated that as we built our business. So that was extremely helpful. Things like, P&Ls, what are your numbers like? I mean, he would call me every single day. Hey, what are our sales at? Where are we at? And those are the things that really ingrained in me as I built into owning our own company.
So, yeah, I mean, in props, again, just props on succeeding in that business model that at least from my, small base of experience sounds very difficult and very competitive. I mean, there's a community gym on every corner, and it's usually run by a fit guy who's passionate about training. And
yeah,
it does, probably 1 out of 100 ever really emerge as a big brand that makes a significant impact. And so, congratulations on that. You mentioned your daughter got leukemia. Is that something you're comfortable kind of sharing about?
Yeah. I mean, she's doing well. So yes.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that so often in these business conversations and these, like everybody idealizes, I mean, entrepreneurship has become such an Instagram filtered cliche now, right? It's all about who's on the cover of Fast Company and who did the latest tech, whatever. And it's probably even more so for you being in Northern California. But the reality is entrepreneurs, they do a really hard thing and they still have to be actual people with families and lives. And what was that? I don't know. I mean, could you share maybe what you experienced or what you learned from going through that journey with your daughter?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, you should, if you're not motivated to kind of grow and reach your potential, right? One thing to think about is that if life throws you a curveball, you want to be as prepared for it as humanly possible. And that means mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, et cetera. And I think for us, we were in a good position to take on that news as best as you could, while simultaneously it really sucked, and it sucked for a very, very, very long time. But the point being is that, what I learned about it is that, kind of develop your team. So at the time, this was 2016, we had some staff of ours really step up, do an incredible job to help run the organization as I kind of shifted my focus. So that was a huge blessing. We had the family around, so they were able to take my son, because we were in the hospital a lot so the way leukemia treatment works is a 2.5-year treatment. And so we were probably in the hospital for maybe 5-6 months, maybe, give or take. Maybe 4 or 5 months, all in, right? You'd be in for a couple weeks, out for a couple weeks, in for a couple weeks, out for a couple weeks. And it depends on how she was doing and whatnot.
That's where you see like the kids in the cancer ward where they're almost like living at the hospital for a period of time. Is that?
Oh yeah, that was us.
Yeah,
100%. So yeah, I mean, you'd be in the hospital because what happens is, a lot of people, they don't know that much about it. I mean, first off, there's a ton of different types of cancers, of course. One type, is leukemia, which is, it's a blood-related disease, and so it takes a long time to cure it. And you use steroids and chemo and whatever. But what happens with these children is that when they get a temperature, it's a really bad thing, especially if they're neutropenic. So what happens is she'll go in almost every day for blood work. But if you're a neutropenic, which means your ANC, which is basically your ability to fight off disease, was below a certain number, if that was the case, it was like a red flag. And then if you start getting a temperature, it was like a, it's a double red flag.
Right.
So that meant you had to stay in the hospital until that fever went away, because the fever meant your body was fighting something. So because of that, we'd be in the hospital for weeks on end until the fever went away, or God forbid, it turned into something really bad. And that happened a few times too. So, but as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, it's really difficult. And it just teaches you to kind of take what's in your control today and really try and optimize your business, try and grow your business, get into a place where you have a team to support you, so that if life throws you a curveball, you could be able to handle it.
Yeah, I appreciate that you said that, and I'm obviously so grateful that it sounds like you've come out the other side of it, and it's in the rear view. I mean, and I'm happy obviously for your family, but I think a lot of people that say, and I'll admit it, I have an agenda, which is I want to entrepreneurialize the whole world. So that is what it is. Doesn't mean I think everyone should start a business, but I think everyone should think entrepreneurial. I think everyone should be trying to build leverage and systems and at least as much process automation as possible in their life, because of exactly what you just said, which is that when life punches you in the face, very often the most valuable asset you have is time to be able to go deal. And you don't want that to be stacking up against your allotment of vacation days and sick days, and then you're out and you're done and you're going to get fired, which is sadly, that's most people's realities.
Yeah. In entrepreneurship, we were talking about this earlier. It's not for everybody. I think you could be an incredible, number 2 or number 3 or finance or this or that. I do think that there's this alluring sexiness to entrepreneurship because of Instagram and Facebook and whatever. People think it's all rainbows and unicorns, but entrepreneurship comes with a lot of struggles. And ultimately, there's a blessing and a curse. The blessing is the onus is on you. When I was in college and I was selling gym memberships, I loved it because if I was successful and made a big paycheck, it was on me. If I didn't have a good paycheck, it was on me too. But it came with a lot of pros and cons, right? Because it was in my control. But if you can't level up or if you're not putting yourself mentally in that mindset to have that pressure, it could be really detrimental if you're not ready for it, because the pressure is on you to make these big decisions, to make the ultimate call. And that's not for everybody. And if they put themselves in that position and they're not ready for it, they could be doing way better if they just found a different position that maybe they're uniquely qualified for. And so I think each person needs to reflect on, hey, what am I uniquely good at? How do I enhance that position, right? While simultaneously looking for other opportunities, if there is something, to have a little bit more of this. Because when I think about an entrepreneurial mindset, I think about this growth mindset, this idea of reaching your potential. But your potential doesn't have to be in owning and operating a business. It could be in something else entirely different within your job scope that you're just uniquely qualified for. So that if you did get hit with a challenge, other companies would be lining up to hire you because you're so damn good at what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think we completely agree. When I say entrepreneurialize the whole world, I don't mean everybody needs to go start a business. I mean, everybody needs, I would suggest, I mean, I can't tell everybody what they need to do, but I would suggest, I offer up that constantly living under the question of what would an entrepreneur do in this job, in this situation?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
right?
That's right. Yeah.
How would I apply entrepreneurial thinking to this right now? And part of that with the Amrap philosophy is, look, when your daughter doesn't have, and this is my call to the world, when your daughter doesn't have cancer, when you haven't been in a car wreck and your back is screwed up for 6 months, or when you're not in the middle of one of life's massive disruptions, you have to work like you will be tomorrow. Because if you're not in one of those situations, I see so many people that think they have time and they're complacent and they think they're on a good enough track. There's no such thing as good enough, because the reality is tomorrow your daughter could get diagnosed with leukemia, and then you are going to be kicking yourself going, why didn't I double down when I could, so that I could grow the business, or automate the position or hire the staff or create the processes that allow me the time to go live in the cancer ward with her for a month. But instead, I have to keep going in because I didn't work as hard as I could when I had time to do it.
Well, and look, you're talking about business. Well, you're talking about a lot of things, but I would say that in all areas, right? So that's evaluating your relationships. That's evaluating, how strong, what type of hedges are we building here? Financially, physically, emotionally, right? All those areas, right? How can we stack the chips in our favor so that if you aren't exercising, and for example, all you're doing is just building a hedge. So if you're exercising on a regular basis and you do get in a car wreck, you're probably gonna be better positioned to recover from that. If you are going through this challenge, but you financially put yourself in this position, that's going to help you as well. And so it's in each area of your life trying to build the hedge and have that entrepreneurial mindset like what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mentioned when I was a kid, I was, sort of a fan of like bodybuilding, and I read, Flex magazine and Muscle and Fitness and stuff. And I remember reading an article about a bodybuilder. Now, admittedly, I don't even think it's probably, he definitely did steroids. So like, that is what it is, a whole separate conversation. But, which you just have to do if you want to compete in that industry, at least in the last 30 years, like post Arnold anyway. But he got cancer. He was a competitive bodybuilder and he got cancer, and he went through like an intense, 6 months, I don't remember, 6 or 12 months, but like a super intense extended round of radiation and chemo as one of those treatment protocols that takes the average person and they come out of it looking like they've been in a concentration camp. It's total wasted and gaunt. He came out of it. He's looked like a normal guy because he had so much, muscular cushion in the beginning that all the wasting did was just bring him back to where like, a guy like me is today. And it was a great metaphor for what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's good motivation, right? It's that idea of kind of preparing yourself for the unknown. And you could do that in a variety of different ways, but including, trying to stack up your business, right? Look at COVID. COVID came in and kicked a lot of people, including our business. Our brick and mortar, I'm sitting in a location right now that's been closed for 10 months. And so if you don't have diversified revenue streams, if you haven't established the team, if you haven't looked at your expenses and really tried to look at your business as an entity and said, hey, are we a strong entity? Do we have multiple legs to the table? Are we prepared for the unknown? And then looking at all other areas of your life and trying to imply that same mindset, I think it's really valuable. I think it's definitely not going to hurt if you have that mindset.
Yeah, I know that's one of the things that Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner in Berkshire Hathaway, that's one of the things he talks about is he does like a worst case analysis periodically on their whole portfolio, where he literally imagines like, what is the absolute like most like Hollywood level calamity that could befall our business? Like Independence Day, like aliens invading. And would we be okay then? And if not, he gets proactive now. And that type of analysis on like to your point on our whole life is, everybody thinks it's not going to happen to them, and then it does. And then, like you said, COVID, and in that case, it happens to everyone, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you can go crazy thinking about, aliens coming down. But yes, I agree. Like, there's definitely parameters that you could think about. And I don't think anybody thought about a virus doing this to the world. But that being said, there's a way that you can kind of like look at things and say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how extreme or likely is this? Very, very, very unlikely versus moderately unlikely. And then you could prepare yourself at a certain gauge and then see where you end up at.
Yeah. I think the key to the worst case analysis, because I didn't even think it because I'm so not like this, but you bring up a good point, which is some people run away with that and essentially become paralyzed and debilitated by fear. The key with that kind of analysis is to limit your set of considerations to only things that you can control. Right?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, that's right.
Then, start to armor up. Yeah, start to armor up those things. Your body, and it's always going to come back to the same things. It's your body, it's your finances, it's your relationships. I don't know. Is there anything else even to worry about? Body, health, relationships, and finances and career. I don't know.
Yeah, think about it. If you're not you're totally right? You can get in for your workouts. You can start optimizing your team. If you do own a business, there's a lot of things you could be doing right now, and just thinking about what those are and start working towards a path on that is number one.
So then, you know, if you're comfortable sharing, you don't have to, you know, expose any IP or, you know, new plans that you're not ready for the market to know about. But in general, what are you doing? How have you adapted to COVID?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously our brick and mortar has taken a huge hit. We've had to consolidate there, kind of think about what that strategy is. We've moved outside in some areas. But our model, so our business had the corporate wellness vertical, we had the brick and mortar, then we had a digital model where it was a B2B product. So what we did is we sold our plans, our workouts, our everything we do in our gyms, we sold them to other gyms. And so we built up a large audience there that has sustained us quite well from a digital perspective. We also have an end user product that we're releasing here pretty soon. So we're pivoting from brick and mortar and corporate wellness to additional digital products specifically for the end user. And we didn't really focus as much on the end user before, but now we're going to start shifting more in that direction. So you'll be seeing more and more of that come out. We'll have a new app released here in the beginning of the year that I'm really excited about.
Cool. Well, when you know, I don't know exactly when this episode will be released, but when that app comes out, send us the link and we can, even if it's after the fact, we can go seed it into the description wherever this appears.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, we're going to have on-demand workouts follow along. We'll have daily workouts. We'll have a lot of that stuff. So if people are looking for the workouts I was describing earlier, right, we're going to have a great platform for them to be able to do that on.
So are you, sorry, I'm looking through my notes. There was something that I was like, I can't forget to ask him. Oh yeah. It was the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Tell me about that. When did you get into that?
About 5 years ago. So about 5 years ago, I got introduced to it. Earlier on, I had been introduced to it a long time ago. We used to have jiu-jitsu right above where we used to train at. And so I got introduced to it maybe, I don't know, 8 years ago. Then after that, I kind of got out of it because I was competing at a really high level in CrossFit. And so once I stopped competing professionally in CrossFit, it was a really good opportunity for me to shift back into it. And like I said, I mean, it's a great thing from a mindset perspective. It's also a good thing as a coach. So as a coach, it's really nice to go put yourself in a beginner perspective, right? Back in kind of like a new learning phase. I think what happens is we become experts at something and we forget what it's like to be brand new at something again. And so exploring rock climbing or surfing or doing something new, I think is important. Jiu-jitsu gives me that opportunity on a regular basis to go explore new things, which makes me have more empathy and makes me a better coach because I can relate more to people when they're learning a new skill. So I've been doing jiu-jitsu now 5 years. I'm a purple belt. The way the belts goes, it goes white, you stay there for a while, then blue, you stay there for a while, and then purple, brown, and then black.
Yeah, I remember when I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in my 20s. Again, I did it less than a year. But I remember there was a certain sort of energy knowing that the guy that was, you know, instructing me, like literally he could like kill me. Like it would, you know, if he just got mad and threw his scruples out the window, like, I mean, there was nothing I was going to be able to do. But there was something that, like you said, something so like gentle and empathetic about that relationship. It's almost like parent-child. We're like, I'm there as a child.
Valuable.
You know?
Well, yeah, I mean, so there's a certain level of respect that has to go throughout the entire school, because if someone gets out of line, you could really hurt someone or, to your point, kill somebody. And so I think that's an important note to take, is that across the whole ecosystem, as you're training, there's that overall thread of mutual respect, because you're all trying to improve, you're all trying to get better, and you're all trying to learn skills that could really hurt somebody. And so it starts from the top down. And I'd say more so than most, you know, CrossFit had this in the early days, this kind of like tribe mentality where people were learning new things and they were always trying to share knowledge because they wanted to elevate each other. Jiu-jitsu is very much like that today, where you're sharing a lot of knowledge and information back and forth to enhance each other moving forward. And it's kind of a tight-knit community because it is so hard. You know, just like CrossFit or just like training is really hard, it kind of weeds out the people that don't have the same mindset of growth potential because of how challenging it is. I mean, you probably saw that in your first year, especially in jiu-jitsu. You know, you go in, you walk in for your first class, get your ass kicked. Most people, they go in for a couple more and then they'll probably give up.
Right. So yeah, you mentioned the tribe mentality. You know, that's probably worth riffing on here for a minute. You know, so we talked a lot about entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs historically, and I think sort of in the romance of entrepreneurship, there's very much this like lone wolf model of entrepreneurship, that like it's the guy who's alone in his garage tinkering or coding on his computer. But the reality is growth and longevity typically evolve in tribal context. You need community to really see things through. And I think that's, I don't think, I know, because I hear this, is a lot of people get into the entrepreneurial journey and they just say like, I had no idea it was going to be so lonely. So I'm curious, what do you do to not experience that? Is it kind of lonely at the top? How do you stay connected, and what's that part of your life look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. It is lonely, because back to what I was saying is that you take on a lot of the risk, liability. You take on that decision making, which is good and bad, right? Because it's in your control. But not everyone can relate with that same mentality, right? Because not everybody is there. So I think to create that level of tribeness, I think you have to network with other CEOs and entrepreneurs like Mark Bell or like other friends that we have, so you could talk about things that you could both relate to. It's like when you have a kid. So when you have a kid and you have a bunch of friends and no one else has a kid, and then all of a sudden you have a kid, it's hard for them to relate to the fact like, hey, I got to go home like at 8 o'clock because I got to go wake up at 5 a.m. to go feed my baby, whatever, right?
Right.
You can't relate to it. It's the same thing in entrepreneurship as a CEO. Sometimes as you mature, you'll have certain people in your circle and friends that they just aren't in the same situation. It's not like having kids or not kids. It's just, they just don't have it. And so finding similar people with children or finding similar people with businesses, you could then start having those discussions on a really real level, because you're both going through similar things. What I've realized over the years, and I'm sure you have too, it doesn't matter if you're in the e-commerce business and ClickFunnels and brick and mortar, most businesses most of the time have the exact same issues. And it's just the way it goes. It's people, it's leadership, it's growth, it's sales, it's marketing, it's branding, all the same things, just in different fields.
Yeah, I was listening to this book this morning, and it's called, it's a Dan Kennedy book. Are you familiar with Dan Kennedy? He's like this legend of direct response copywriting. So for like digital marketers, we're always obsessed with like words that sell and how to drive human behavior, click here, go here, do this through just words. That's all you have, right?
Right.
And Dan Kennedy's like this guru, but he has this series of books called the No BS series. There's like 20 of them. It's No BS copywriting, No BS people management, No BS, selling. But I was listening to this book this morning that's on managing people. It's called like No BS. I can't remember. It's the No BS guide to, ruthlessly managing people and generating profit in your business or something. And as I was reading it, I was like, only business owners could appreciate this book. Anyone that doesn't own a business would think this guy is the most heartless asshole, because he's talking about the realities of depending on your people who, as he puts it, there's a certain element of like a fundamentally adversarial relationship, which is like you want more from them than you're having to pay them, and they want more money from you than they're wanting to work.
100%.
And you're wanting your business to be the most important thing in their life, when really they're thinking about their husband or wife who just wants them home at 6 o'clock. And like, there's this tension. But anybody reading this book would be like, man, this is a really dark, cynical way to look at it. Except for me as a business owner, I'm like, the truth doesn't have to be pretty, but it's true. And it's to your point, like there's a language that we speak that may not be understood by other people, but could be even off-putting.
You could be off-putting, and I have to be really careful about that. When I got into this thing, I started a company when I was 22, and as it grew to more and more staff and whatnot, here we are 13 years later, and I became a little jaded. And I have to be really careful not to become as jaded, because people sometimes surprise you, right and wrong. But in general, I saw this from my father-in-law. My father-in-law's had an engineering company for maybe 40 years. He's been in the trenches, 30 years in the trenches. And I remember one day I was talking to him, and he just seemed so damn jaded, just so like, and I'm like, why do you seem so jaded? And it's because of years and years and years of seeing the same thing over and over again and being burned and this and that. And I have to remind myself not to get that way, because I just don't think that's the way to go. But it's hard not to when you see similar things and similar behaviors continue to come up, probably close to what this guy was talking about in his book. that if you haven't seen it, he probably seems like a total jerk.
Well, but this is a great example of a conversation between, like-minded peers with similar challenges, where essentially you and I are reminding each other, like, yes, this is something we all deal with, but don't get jaded, or because there's a price tag to that too, and two wrongs don't make a right, right?
Yeah.
So it's a great example of the types of conversations that, entrepreneurs really should seek out in collaboration. And by the way, my advice to any entrepreneur that wants to expand their network is start a podcast. I've got the most amazing network now, just literally because of this podcast. But well, listen, man, I want to respect your time, and we're technically up on what we allotted for this. This has been an amazing conversation, Jason. I literally feel like we could talk for, 20 more hours and probably just only quit when we got tired and fell asleep. But how can the world go get more of your goodness, whether it's socially or in terms of your business or products? How can the world find you?
Yeah, I mean, best place to probably find me is on Instagram at Jason Kalipa. You could also, go on Instagram and see our company, nc.fit. You can go to nc.fit. We'll be updating that with a lot of the new products, new things we're releasing, because we're pivoting our business quite a bit. And that's a great place to find me. And if you want to go check out the book, it's As Many Reps as Possible. It's available all over the place, but Amazon's probably the best place.
Okay. Yeah. We'll get all those links and put them in the description. So honestly, man, I just appreciate it. I'm grateful that you came on Millionaire Secrets. It's been a wonderful conversation. I'm excited to get the feedback. The podcast has grown enough now that every episode I get a decent amount of feedback on from people. And I suspect there's going to be a lot of love for this episode. So thanks again for making the time, Jason.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I hope everybody has a great day.
Yeah, awesome. And thank you to all of you watchers and listeners out there. You are the best part of Millionaire Secrets and why I get up every day and do what I do. Take care. We'll talk soon. Thank you for watching Millionaire Secrets. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and leave us a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you know whenever we release a new episode. Also, if you want to learn the fastest way to become a millionaire in the new economy, click the link in the description below to claim your free copy of my book, The Millionaire Shortcut. And don't forget, Millionaire Secrets is available on all the major podcast platforms as well. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you can listen on the go. Thanks for watching.